Welcome back to another episode of Dreams, Dollars, and Destiny. I'm one of your hosts, Portia with the Soul Card Studio, joined by my friends, Mr. Westbrooks with Supreme Numerics and Mrs. Queen Bee Malinda on Numeralytics. So grateful that you're here with us or back here with us, whichever one. And look, if you loved our last video, please leave a comment down below so we can see how much you enjoyed it. But more importantly, like, subscribe, and share that video with someone else who could benefit from it, right? And then also get them to subscribe as well because we hit you every Monday with the facts, right? And we always talk about things that uplift people and also put you in a better position than where you were before you got our information. So this week, y'all, look, we're talking about something heavy. We're talking about the whitewashing of Black wealth. I know, right? We were going back and talking about wealth again because it's very important, right? Wealth is where we sustain our freedom here, especially in the country of America. So Black wealth, yeah, you know what? It's been complicated and often obscure in America. And, this conversation actually is long overdue because we have had financial institutions in the past, like Black Wall Street, to even redlining, right? Certain neighborhoods who couldn't qualify for loans. And then on top of that, we've had generational wealth gaps, systemic barriers that have been in place for years that have blocked us from wealth, like getting loans, credit barriers, and things of that nature. And so the roadblocks to Black financial prosperity is real, y'all, and has been real for a very long time. And guess what? It's been documented as well. So today we're going to ask a different question. Is Black wealth being deliberately whitewashed, right? In 2026, right? We're going to talk about things that happened in the past and also things that are happening today. And then, we had a lot of achievements as well over the years, right? And then we as a people or as a community, we are resilient. We do bounce back. And not to mention, we have great economic power, right? We have a lot of influence on the economy. But, as Americans here, and, as far as Black people go, we are often minimized financially and repackaged or outright erased from mainstream narrative of having financial wealth. And why is that? So we're going to pull back the curtain on Black wealth and have a conversation about it, about who portrays the wealth, who actually controls the narrative, and why that really matters that we reclaim our own prosperity. Because guess what? Here in 2026, this is the time, y'all, to get your bag up, right? There's so many opportunities here. We've had past episodes about AI and different ways that you can raise your financial prosperity through that system, but also there's a lot of stocks and things like that people can buy that are AI stocks, right? We can tie it back to that you can get in today that can help build your family legacy. So let's take a full look at this whole truth. We're going to go a little bit in the past, and then we're going to bring you here into the present with this information. So one of the things that I wanted to first start talking about is let's talk about Black Wall Street, right? That was documented in history that Black people were doing excellently well, right? We had our own ecosystem, and we were financially solvent with Black Wall Street. We actually had our dollar, Black dollar, stayed in Black hands, and there was just an equalness as far as everyone being able to accomplish and achieve what they wanted in unison because we were working as a community because we had the financial means to do that and make decisions that influence the community at large or the neighborhoods. We also know that when Black people do have wealth, it's often frowned upon by other races. So let's jump into that a little bit. Let's talk about Black Wall Street, y'all. Well, somebody has
Looks like
to.
my mic was muted there. I was trying to talk. Peace and love, everybody. Peace and love. Welcome to episode 10. We are so happy that you're here with us. We really want to thank everyone for being here and subscribing. And yeah, this is really a continuation, a little bit of our conversation last week. Each week we're building on different topics. And Black Wall Street really was something that we can look to from the past, learn from, and recalibrate, right, and rebuild. Because really, what they did with Black Wall Street, started off of us not being able to, shop at a certain store. And then I think a brother got together with a few others and they had some money and they bought this land and they started opening these businesses. And then it just started to spread into Black Wall Street. And you're right, that black dollar was kept there. We had everything we need. We had doctors there, we had dentists, scientists, shoemakers, just anything that you can think of store wide was present in Black Wall Street. And like you said, unfortunately, that was in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And unfortunately, there was a race massacre. I don't like to call it a race riot because we were not rioting anything. We were massacred. We were under attack. So, that all leads back to, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think that led to a white woman saying like a black man like tried to hit on her or something like that, or an elevator. Not even hit on her. I think they said they touched them in the elevator or something. It was something crazy like, and he didn't even do that. But then when they took that back, they came and they bombed Black Wall Street. They dropped actual bombs on this city and killed dozens of people. The whole Black Wall Street was torn down basically from this. Um,
Yeah.
Again, this is one more example of how when we do pull ourselves up by our bootstraps and go get our own, it gets destroyed. And this has happened, not just with Tulsa. This has happened with a lot of different cities and black cities and towns that we've had throughout the course of history. So yeah, that's just my take on it. So again, when we do go ahead and do our own thing, there's infiltration or there is a plan to destroy it. And I think that's what we've seen throughout history. And I think that makes it harder for us now to really, get things together and get back on that track because of that fear of knowing that history and what's happened to us.
And I also would like to interject too, Queen, that the Black Hawk Wall Street massacre happened May 31st, June 1st. So that actually just passed. And the fact that that goes unnoticed and unrecognized every year, that is really a shame. We as a community should really address that and at least give some acknowledgement to the people that did die during this massacre that was unwarranted, right? It was the fact that there were some white people that were upset that black people had money and they wanted to burn everything that we built down to put us back in destitution and poverty again.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. All right. There we go. There's my unmute button. Peace and love to the Dreams, Dollars, and Destiny family out there. We welcome to episode 10. Episode 10. So it's great to be back.
10 on 10.
Yep.
The Wheel of Fortune.
That's right. That's right. Those who know numerology illusion right there. But yes, this is a very, very important topic. And I think starting with the history provides examples for us to use as models, because these are, of course, the Black Wall Street in Tulsa, but also the numerous other Black Wall Streets across America throughout our history. They serve as examples and as inspiration for us. So one thing that I'll be emphasizing throughout this conversation is the importance of education, and education from multiple perspectives. Not only the education of the history of our history and in the history of our wealth, but also the education, also financial education too. Those two, you can't have one without the other, and you'll see that as this conversation goes along. Now, when it comes to the education, what comes to mind for me, one book that I have, and I just thought of it right when we were going live, so I didn't grab it. My bookshelf is on the other side of the room, but I do have the title, Collective Courage by Jessica Gordon Nembhard. And that is a book that chronicles the history of cooperative business ownership for Black people in America. So books like that, also looking into the history of the mutual aid, the various mutual aid societies around the country, such as the North Carolina Mutual Life Insurance Company, though, these are all examples for us to look to. Jackson Ward in I believe that was in Richmond, called it the Harlem of the South. These are all examples that we can look to see how they did it, what they did, what exactly was the downfall of those, as the Queen alluded to, because there's different reasons why a lot of these businesses and societies don't exist anymore. So we could take the lessons from history and apply them to the present day as we look to recreate the business and the collective and cooperative business ownership, so that it's not only successful, but it has the longevity and it can sustain itself for future generations.
And you're right about it repeating itself, because there was an incident on Peach Street in Atlanta, right, in the early 1900s, 1906. Same excuse though: white women were assaulted allegedly by black men. And so I like to point that out, that most of it starts with the white woman, right, being assaulted by some black man, raped or what have you, and then that gives cause for the white mob to come in and just burn down everything that we built, right? And it's always been that lie. So why does that narrative always get spent? Like, why is it always goes back to that? Because it's all propaganda. It's all BS, right? They just felt like they needed a reason to come and do it. But at the end of the day, they were going to do it anyway, right? Just using that as an scapegoat.
Yeah, I think that's a major excuse. That has been a major excuse throughout history, even when we look back to Emmett Till, when that white woman, Carolyn Bryant, told the lie, that 14-year-old Emmett like whistled at her, which was, so it's like that has been a narrative, unfortunately. And as we spoke about on previous episodes, as we know, the grave and unjust history of this country and everything that this country is built on, everything that it stands for is propagated on our demise, or keeping us oppressed or subservient and all those types of things. And I think, again, like you said, it kind of gives an excuse that like we're monsters. It kind of paints the pictures that our men are monsters, and that they want to attack their women, and that's a reason for them to commit violence, which obviously is not. And a lot of those things and rumors, they're just rumors. They're just things that they made up so they could do what they wanted to do anyway.
Yeah, nothing proven to be true, and they never
Right.
get arrested or anything afterwards, right?
Well, the thing is, they take justice into their own hands, which is also a double
Usually sheriff
standard when we
mob
do
anyway.
things, because then when we take justice into our own hands, we're actually convicted of it. So, if we're defending ourselves, and we can even look to some of the current cases, like with Carmelo Anthony, where he had the altercation with
Right
those
on Mark.
twins that were double his size, that were trying to harm him, and he protected himself. That was self-defense. But again, he got convicted and got 35 years in prison. So, when we try to protect ourselves in the name of self-defense, it becomes a crime. But when the dominant society does it, it becomes, oh, that's fine. It's okay. There's no problem. So, I mean, it's the double standard that we have to contend with, being in this country, growing up in this country, in this climate, and this culture. And it makes it doubly hard for us as a community to be financially literate, to have that education that Nick is talking about when it comes to wealth and how to handle funds, and things like trust. Some of these things our community doesn't even know they exist. We don't even, a lot of us don't even know about a trust. We don't know about different assets, because Portia, you mentioned this right before we started. You said that we are propagandized and we are sold liabilities instead of being taught about assets, right? So we hear and we're consumed, and a lot of things are like liabilities, but we don't know how to handle assets, or how to preserve them and keep them, because it's not always about getting the asset. You have to get the asset, but then you have to preserve the asset, so then it can be passed down generationally. But then there's several obstacles that get in the way of us doing that, right?
Right.
And I think that's it's kind of to what we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, and the history of it is long. And one of the things I like to talk about is Black celebrities because people think that, oh, celebrities have so much money. They're the source and center of the wealth of Black excellence and all this good stuff. But when you really break it down to see what these people actually own, usually it's nothing, a fraction of
Yeah.
what you think they should have. I
Hmm.
remember when TLC, the first album they dropped, and they came out and said they had no money. I think they had a contract with Pebbles, who was a Black woman, unfortunately. But you know what I'm saying? And they said they got nothing from all their album sales. I think that album went platinum and all that good stuff. And then
Hmm.
it made you realize that what you see on TV is just an illusion as far as what you think these people have. You see them driving the finest cars, living in the finest homes, but at the end of the day, when the cameras are off, they're back in the hood. That's what happened with New Edition, right? New Edition was going on tour. They were doing big shows all across the country. And when they got off tour, they dropped them right back in the projects, right? And so that just goes to show you that we as Black people, we have so much talent, right? And but other races tend to feed off our energy, right? I told you guys this in the last episode. I mean, I think it was a couple episodes back. We live in an energy extraction matrix, right? And so they're going to extract energy from you financially, emotionally, physically, medically, right? Through your health, any way they can. That's why the medical system was put in place the way that it is. It's not there to support you, it's there to bring you down and take your money as they bring you down. There's nothing nice about that. So let's
Hmm.
kind of dive into Black celebrities, the wealth that's perpetuated through that, and how we think that, oh well, the celebrities have money, they should be able to pour into the communities and help us, but that's never the case.
Never the case, never the case. And I'll just say real quick, I'll keep this point very short because I'm just going to read on the screen. When Black wealth is generated through Black labor, Black talent, or Black culture, who ultimately benefits? Who ultimately benefits? And you just spoke to it. Oftentimes, this money does not get transferred down generationally through the family. Oftentimes, that celebrity or that local talent or that local thing that thing that's happening that's creating and generating this wealth is really, like you said, for the lifestyle and for the time frame. And then when it comes time for it to generationally be transacted, there's some type of, oh, there has to be a smear campaign, or you did something we didn't like, so now we're gonna, set you up for this, or it could. And this is not to say who's right or wrong with things, but a lot of our entertainers who did try to do things and make a change, those were the ones that got a smear campaign against them, or worse, they got unalived, or worse, like Bill Cosby, his whole legacy has gotten smeared, right? So this is what they do. It's a part of the system to kind of allow you to have that wealth while you're locally. And when I say local, I mean like local to the time, right? So why the time frame is hot for you to have that wealth. Oh, we'll let you have the wealth while you're generating wealth for us too. But once that Gary Vee chain is over and they're no longer getting anything off of that wealth, they don't want that wealth being passed down through our generations, through our bloodline.
It's true. Because, a lot of this stuff, and a lot of people don't realize the history of the music industry. The music industry started with the mob, right? And so they would use Black talent to go around to different clubs. But what they would do is keep these artists in a perpetual state of brokenness. Take, for instance, Jackie Wilson. Jackie Wilson was, at the height of his day, one of the top performers. But Jackie Wilson, unfortunately, he was making millions of dollars, but he signed his life over in perpetuity, right? That means even after death, everything that he did. So all his life work, all the energy, all the time, all the talent, right, that he put forward doesn't go to his family. It goes to some white man sitting fat that didn't do anything. And the worst thing that happened to Jackie Wilson is the fact that not only were they giving him fraction of what he should have made, they also were taking out studio time, wardrobe, everything else out of his paycheck, kept keeping him in a perpetual state of having to work all the time. The man got shot in the back, kidney shot, and he had to get back on that stage like 2 days later. And the sad thing about him is that he had to continue to work until the day he died. As a matter of fact, he wound up having a massive brain hemorrhage on the stage. People thought that, it was part of the act. It took people 5 to 7 minutes to realize this man was dying on stage. And then they finally carted him off. He lived 8 years after that in a state hospital. Mind you, this man drew in millions of dollars and then was dumped in an unmarked grave after he died. Now tell me that's not crazy when he generated millions of dollars in his lifetime. And his family, guess what they got? Nothing. Nothing. All that time he took away from them and all that stuff, everything he did went to the record label. So,
Yep.
at the end of the day, the system is set up for, unfortunately, Black artists not to have money. Now, things have changed a bit, now, but artists are still signing their life in perpetuity, right? That means beyond death. That's what happened with Prince. Prince, he wanted to get out his record label. They owned his name. He couldn't even leave with his name. So the wealth extraction is very real. And that's one of the things that I like to speak about, because a lot of people don't understand that celebrities are just there for a front. They're just puppets, right? Just like the Queen is saying here, when Black wealth is generated through Black labor, Black talent, and Black culture, who ultimately benefits? Because it's not the Black community.
Yeah, and then the that lifestyle piece too, when we're shown those images on the surface, that further, yeah, the legacy over lifestyle. Exactly. So when the lifestyle is put into the spotlight instead of the legacy, that's the example for the masses to follow. So they see that and they want to have that too. When in actuality, there are examples of celebrities and athletes who are practicing the principles of legacy, but those aren't the stories are that are getting the main highlights. I remember one actually. This isn't a celebrity, but it's a professional athlete, which and oftentimes they're one and the same. But I'm reminded of the story of Brandon Copeland, who's a NFL player some years ago. There was a story that I came across. I think he was signed. He was signed to the New York Jets at one time, and the story was that when he got his contract, he decided that I'm not going to be flashy. I don't need to be flashy. Instead, I'm going to save 90% of my income. And I'm sure he probably did some investing and things too, because saving is great, but saving isn't enough. I didn't look deeply enough into his story to see what else he was doing with his finances. But not only did he save 90% of his income, but he got into financial education and financial literacy. So these aren't the stories that are being pushed to the forefront. It's the flashiness, it's the lifestyle that we see, and that those are the portrayals that get us off path from our destiny, our or what our destiny and dreams should be. We get sold the sizzle instead of the steak. You know, so media portrayal, images, representation, that's all important, and it plays a big role in how we behave with our finances too. So like oftentimes we do it to ourselves. We don't even have to have an external force come and take away what we have, because we go and give it away on our own. Due to various factors. Like I said, one of just one of them is the portrayal of the lifestyle over the legacy, but it's also the inferiority complex that I talked about in one of our previous shows, and how we define our worth based on our possessions rather than internally. And we know all the reasons to of why, but this is what's happening.
Yeah, it's definitely happened. And I agree with you, Nick. And I think it's sad because this is really what you just said. We can look at this across all 11 areas of activity of how Black Americans are basically propped up, right? Or propagandized, right? So, we have plenty of positive things that we could look to, right? There's plenty of positive stories, there's great stories, there's good things, but those aren't the things that get the airplay, right? We were just kind of alluding to it a little bit before we started. We're like, oh, if you want to go viral or get famous, you just got to do some dumb, ignorant shit, right? So this is what it is. Like when it's when it's pointed to our community, it's got to be propagandized, and it has to have a narrative to it. It has to have something to it to take away the positivity, take away that positive aspect of the guy like Brandon Copeland. And there's other NFL players. There was one NFL player, I don't remember his name, and he was more recent probably than the Brandon Copeland guy. He did something similar, and he like played for a year or whatever it was. Then he left and went and did like some fantastic thing with science, and where he's helping the scientific community do something good for, the Black community. So there are good stories, but those just aren't the ones we hear about, right? We hear about the ignorant stuff. We get, looked at a certain way, and a certain image is being put out there. And then the people, like you said, who are young, impressionable, who are impoverished, when they see that, they're like, damn, I ain't had nothing in my life. I want that. And then when they get that in their mind that they want that, now they're like, prey, because they'll do anything almost to get that. So now the people who are in a position to give you that, they're preying on you now, right? Now they can give you that 360 deal where you're signing your life away in perpetuity, like Portia said, and even some of the newer artists, I think like I don't want to misquote his name, but I think it's the Young Dolph guy. There were a couple of new artists who got actually unalived, and it's suspected that their record label's the one doing it, because these artists, when they get signed, they get a life insurance policy. They get like a $5 million, life insurance policy on them. You know what I'm saying? So, it's like you're just siphoning the wealth from certain aspects of the culture and then propaganding us. So the youth see this certain lifestyle that they really want because they've never had it before. And then it's really easy for you to hook them because you have something they want. So they'll basically do anything for that. You know what I mean? And I think that's where a lot of it comes in at. And I just wanted to, before we move on, and talk about like, this is what wealth includes. It includes more, like, it's not just money. It includes business, real estate, inheritance, getting a trust, having structured networks. And these are the types of things that you can use to influence markets, right? And you can influence generational wealth when you do things like that in a financial literate way. But again, with us, it's always that lifestyle over the legacy. And that's what we have to flip, right? We got to flip it, and it's legacy over lifestyle. And you can have a little bit of both, you can have a little bit of both, but you have to solidify and prioritize the legacy.
And I'd like to speak to that because I think someone earlier today I heard say that, a lot of these young athletes get signed to these multi-million dollar deals, these, tens of millions, hundreds of $1 million deals. And a lot of times they get sports agent, but oh, I got a cousin that's a real estate agent. Then they go get this big house. And then from there, oh, I know this person, they can get you this and that. And then now, all of a sudden, and to Nick's point, like the guy was living modestly, but if you're an NFL player, NBA player, or somebody like that, and you're driving a Honda Accord or a Toyota Camry, they gonna rag you, right? They're like, oh, why you making millions? Why you got a Camry? See what I'm saying?
Yeah, they're gonna mock you.
Yeah, there's a lot of pressure from both ends on that. So it's really tough, really, if you have that kind of money, to be focused on that and not be deliberately spend, all your wealth, because you try to figure out how these guys had multi-million dollar contracts and now they have nothing. But it's because they didn't have a backup plan. They didn't have a financial plan. They didn't have stocks. They didn't have a trust. They didn't have a structure or something in place to ensure that they were going to replenish the money they were making. Replenish the money they were making during the days they were playing, because you can't play forever, right? Mm-hmm. But they get trapped. And remember, we're talking about young kids out of college who probably never had anything. So that mentality, that mindset, and then being influenced by this person, that person telling you what you should have at this point, it's hard to make it.
It is hard to make it. And I also want to talk about a little bit because we're talking about the celebrities and athletes and stuff like that. So I want to point out a couple of statistics, and I want to really make sure that I'm framing this in a positive way. But I do want to point this out because this is a part of the reason why a lot of the wealth does get siphoned out of the community. So I want to start off by saying most Black men do marry Black women. Okay. And I'm not talking about celebrities, I'm not talking about athletes, I'm just talking about in general. In America, most Black men marry Black women. Roughly 79% of Black men are married to Black women. So I want to, first of all, dispel that narrative right there that all the Black men are going for the white women, all the Black women are going for the white man. I want to dispel that right there because that's not true. 79% of Black women are married to Black men, right? They're married. So that's 79%. That's a high rate. But however, when we look at the statistics of let's just pick on the NBA because there's a lot there, right? So if we look at the NBA, where we know, like you said, a lot of these kids are fresh out of college. Some of these NBA stars, like Kobe, came out of high school. They didn't even go to college, right? So they are young, impressionable. They don't know about wealth. They don't know about money. They don't know about these types of concepts and what this stuff means. So a couple of statistics about those NBA players: 28% of the NBA players are married to Black women. 30% of the NBA players are married to Black NBA players are married to Black women. 30% of Black NBA players are married to biracial women with a Black heritage, whatever that means. And then 41% of Black NBA players are married to non-Black women. So 40% now of what would be wealth that could be transactionally supported back generationally through the Black community is now leaving. That's 40% of that wealth that's leaving the Black community because, again, the man, makes the wealth, they make the money, but the women, whoever the woman is raising a family, you're married, whatever community your wife is from, you're basically married to that community a bit. Like you have to be familiar with them too, and I'm not like upset about that. I'm not, love who you want to love. Yeah. But you ought to think about, if you do care about generational wealth, if you care about your community and you are doing that, maybe you should be getting some financial literacy classes. Maybe you should be, trying to look to invest your money into something that with the Black community that's going to stand a testament of time past your lifetime. So not just on an individual level, you can invest in something that's going to help the community as a whole, where a portion of that money, of course, you want to have money for your family, but a portion of that money could go to the community. So there's different things that these players could do, but I don't think that I want to say that they're not smart enough to do it, or maybe they don't want to do it. Some people don't want to do that. They don't feel like that's their charge to do it. But then that goes back to, what are we doing for ourselves as a community? How are we supporting each other as a community? It goes to our last episode. Do we build each other up or do we tear each other down? It speaks to all of this stuff. Because I can tell you right now, any other community that we could pick out the cherry hat to talk about, they support their own, right? They have their own enclaves, they have their own everything. Another thing I want to point out is, and we can take this back to Black Wall Street, after that, and moving into the timeline when integration started, a lot of the point of integration was to drain Black wealth, drain us of that Black wealth. Because now that we're integrated, we no longer have the ability to have a Black Wall Street and have our own neighborhood and our own stores. That was stripped of us when we signed on for integration, because now you've integrated into this community. However, that community still don't want you there. So you basically have just become a consumer class now. So prior to that, all the wealth that you had in a Black Wall Street, that now, instead of becoming an asset because it was building legacy, it's now being transformed into a consumer class, and it's a liability because it's just your money flying out of your pocket, not just your pocket, out of your community. Like you said, the Black dollar don't even spend a day in the Black community. It spends less than 18 hours in a Black community, where you can look at, The Jewish dollar, I think it spends like 25 days in their community before it even touches anywhere else. So yeah, I mean, it's a lot. I know I said a mouthful there, but that's truth. Those are the statistics. So overall, if we're looking at it from an overall standpoint, yes, most of us are married. Most Black men are married to Black women, 79%. But when we look at Black men that are in a position to have wealth that can be passed down generationally, 40% of them, when we're looking at the NBA, are not doing that. It's not getting passed back down to the Black community.
Yeah. And that's what Bernie Mac, that's how the white man get his money back.
Yeah.
So, they marry in, that's how the white man, he married to these families. But it's more of an infiltration, because I feel like that those people have infiltrated us in our wealth, right? You said integration, I said infiltration, because that's what's really what's happening. Anytime, I hate to say it, Negro get a dollar, here they come, because they know that they're going to capitalize and also benefit from the wealth that this Black man is generating, whether he's an NBA player, an actor, or a football player, whatever that is. They get it back that way. And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the whitewashing of Black wealth. And yes, I do understand, and Queen pointed out, love who you want to love. But if you're going in that direction because you're being influenced, right, by whatever, I guess, ecosystem that you may be in, because a lot of these players, they'll be like, oh, well, there weren't any Black women around, right? I don't know about that excuse, but that sometimes they'll use that. I'm like, I don't know if that's true. But at the end of the day, the system was built in order to extract the money back from us. Anytime you get money, and that's why they said, even if they gave us reparations, that money would still go back. We'd be broke right back. And they guarantee that because they know we don't have the financial literacy to hold on to any money and build from there.
We don't have the resources or the commodities. Like, we don't have the stores.
If you get reparations, I'm saying we wouldn't do it.
We're going to pay it back to them because we don't have enough stores to do it for each other. Like, we would have to build up. Like, I look at places like Atlanta. Like, I've never been, I know, Portia, you've been down there in the Black district down there. I've never been to the Black district currently in Atlanta, but I heard about it. I know about it and stuff like that. And I know there's a lot of Black wealth there. I'm looking at places like that. That's what we need to start doing. Like, we need to take that model, take what we learned from Tulsa, take that model in Black Atlanta, and in any major city where a lot of us reside, we need to just start building those types of things up. I think there was a lady over in DC who opened up kind of a strip mall for Black people. I can't, recall the name and stuff, but she was trying to do that, over in DC. So the more we do that, so let's say we get our reparations, right? But instead of us like splurging, we all get together and have a plan and be like, nah, we're going to go take this and buy these acres of land. And we're going to do what they did in Black Wall Street. We're going to do what they did in Atlanta. And we're going to build everything up that we need with this money that we got. And then we're going to keep that money circulating within our own community. Make the rules, the regulations of how we want it to go. And we really could do it. But I know what you're saying conceptually right now. We can't, because right now we're not in a position to do that because we've been locked out of that, right? You're locked out of those resources. You're redlined. You're redlined for not only homes, you're redlined for loans, Mm-hmm. So it's an uphill battle. It's an uphill battle. But I think it definitely could work. If we did it that way, we could do it and pull it off.
And we Black communities have fewer Black ones too, right? They removed a whole lot of banks out of Black communities.
Yes. And I think
institutions.
Killer Mike, I think he was doing a Black bank with a couple of other brothers. I think they were trying to put a Black bank together. And I don't really know how well that's going. But I think, also the problem comes in where, and I think Nick he said this last week, the rugged individualism. And this is something that that's never been an inherent part of our community. That has been like taught to our community. It's been like taught to us that that's the way you should be. That's how they want us to be, because they know if we're in together, then that's going to expel that, and then we will build and work with each other. But this type of rugged individualism, everyone just wants to be the man. Everyone just wants to, have that lifestyle, and we got to work toward more than that. It's got to be more than just that lifestyle. And that rugged individualism is not even from our culture. That's That's what we learned from the dominant society. That's their culture. And actually, Dr. Frances Cress Welsing speaks about that in her book, The ISIS Papers. She speaks about that isolation, that alienation, and all that kind of stuff. That's not our culture. That has been taught to us.
That's them.
Yes.
Yes. And I'm glad you brought up the infiltration piece of it, because all of that is the infiltration over the integration, because that's it did, particularly with those statistics that the Queen brought out with the NBA players. All of that is I agree. It has to be strategic, and it was interesting, and I got a couple examples of that too. I'll start with Brittany Renner. She's a melanated woman, but remember Deion Sanders brought her in to talk to his players about high profile athletes and women going after those high profile athletes for their assets and all of that. And that's a snapshot of the whitewashing of the black wealth when it comes to the athletes. And when I say strategic, they get them when they're young, because Queen, you mentioned young and impressionable. They're only 18 years old when they come in, but they get them young. They plan this out. They're playing the long game with it. I think about what I think about, which it's a fictional movie, but it's based on actual events. I think of He Got Game, the Spike Lee joint with Ray Allen as Jesus Shuttleworth, and the character that played Rick Fox, he was giving Jesus the tour around Tech U, and he took him to meet the assistant coaches, and they was tumbling around on that waterbed. So they got him. He's still in high school, mind you. They get him when they're young, right? They treat him like kings. This is all an act, though. They treat them like kings. They give them their bodies. They write their term papers. They do their laundry. So they get them while they're young and impressionable. They stay with them. Draft day, you watch them on the screen. They sitting right next to them on draft day. Yep. And yeah, so it's all like I said, it's all strategic. But I just wanted to mention that. And then also the distrust too comes with it as well. And I'm shifting back to the latter part of the comments that you all made about working cooperatively in a rugged individualism. There's also a lot of distrust, because we have so many examples of our people who ran scams, and they started these investment opportunities or these initiatives. Like you have the like the Jay Morrison scandals, and even in the conscious community with like your brother Polites and people like those. So when people suffer from those kind of scams with investments, real estate, the lien, I think Brother Polite was doing like the tax lien thing. People have they form this distrust, like, okay, I'm never going to support anything our people are doing again because I got scammed, or I saw all these people get scammed by this person. So these are other kind of uphill battles we're fighting, but we can counteract that by bringing up the examples of the people who are doing the right thing and doing the good work and have integrity, and have the results and the track record of doing the right kind of business. So I just wanted to contribute those couple of pieces as we're moving this conversation along.
Yeah, and you brought some good information there, because when like Queen is saying, when wealth leaves the community faster than it's created, then the long-term consequences, and we have been suffering for generations, right? And and to be honest with you, it's not all our fault, right? Because every time we would build something, our own communities, or have our own, it's always destroyed, it's always dismantled, right? And it just
infiltrated.
Yeah, or infiltrated. And so it's just unfortunate that that seems to be the long running narrative in our history. But now we do have different means and different ways of getting things done. Now with blockchain technology, we can create what's called DAOs, right? Decentralized autonomous organizations, and we can operate as a community strictly on the blockchain, right? And that they don't know what's going on. So, we need to figure out things now. And like I said, with this technology, we'll be able to do more and go farther together as a community. We just need to start utilizing the technology in a way that would benefit all of us on a greater scale.
I
So that's
agree.
for me, that's the solution. Let's start using this technology and figure out ways to bring the community together and keep wealth within, because there's so many opportunities now for us to have our own money and to be sovereign, right? And a lot of artists now, they're not even going through record companies. A lot of people are being independent now. And so now you have an opportunity to create independent wealth. And that's what we're really about, right? And having your family come up as well, because I understand not everybody may not listen to you and what you're saying about, getting into investing, starting a trust and all that. But once they see you do it and you do it successfully, well, they're going to want a piece of that too. So let you be the example, right? Just let yourself be that example, be that guiding light for everybody else to bring up with you. So once you've done it, you can go back and teach and reach others.
I agree. I agree with all that. I really, I think this was really a strong discussion because this stuff is real. It's some of the real things that we face as a community, that have prevented us from rising above this, right? We're still the consumer class. So there are a lot of things that we do have to do. And I think you just said a great thing, Portia. That sounds like something that you could teach us all how to do as a community, You like that could be something that you teach because you know how to do that with the blockchain and all that kind of stuff. And I know you do offer classes and stuff like that. And a lot of things I also want to say with us guys, we got to stop being scared to like take a chance and take classes from people. You always, if you ain't learning, you dying, so you need to learn. You need to kind of, make sure you're continuing to update yourself with the times that we're living through. Because again, with all this going on with I mean, all of this stuff is moving forward in a progressive way to the future. We don't want to be left behind in that, right? We don't want to continue to be the bottom on that. And if we don't do something now to start like reversing that and start like inserting ourselves as, main pieces, because one thing that I wanted to put up here is that they play chess while we're playing checkers. And that's that legacy over lifestyle goes back to that. We have to be those kings and queens that I know we are on that chessboard, and we have to play chess. We got to play for the long game. See, a lot of it, we play for the short game. Because again, like Nick said, like you said, we're impoverished. We want to get out of poverty. They get you young, they get you hooked, they get you, then they like vampires, they can sink their teeth into you. But we got to start thinking long term and stop thinking just of what type of lifestyle we want to have and think of things long term. You want to continue to see your hood in its dilapidated condition, and stuff like that. So I do think it's real important that we're having a conversation about it. And I also wanted to mention about the celebrities and stuff, different celebrities and the NBA players. I almost think it's like a clause. Like some of them get approached with a clause like it, okay, if you know, if you got to do this. If you don't do this, you were going to take everything you have. And there's been plenty of examples of where they've done that with different celebrities throughout the years, where a person that hears that is going to be like, okay, I believe it, they're going to take this if I don't do this, so I got to do this, like, or you feel like you're between that rock and that hard place and you just have to do what you're basically being told to do. So I think that goes back to having more solidarity in a community and just having each other's back more. That's what I kind of want to see. I want to see us really just have our backs more and really, support each other, in light of everything that's going on in society right now, looking at some of these major cases that have just happened, looking at different boycotts that the community is setting out to do. I know for myself, I said I'm done. Like I had enough. And at the point that we're at as a community, that's what's going to take, family. And I see it throughout all the comments on Instagram. I see it everywhere. We're tired, like we really are, but we're at a standstill, we're at like a precipice. because we're like, we're tired of this, but we don't want to start no trouble, kind of thing. But you can't have both. So you're either going to be tired of it and you're going to stand up and do the things you need to do, or you're just going to be tired of it and keep saying you're tired of it and not do anything to change it. And that's not the way we need to operate. We need to be progressive. We have Uranus, the planet of change, revolution, upheaval, moving right into that sign of Gemini. It's an air sign. So we need to, communicate, exchange, support one another, exchange of ideas, revolution. It's an upheaval that could happen. And it doesn't have to be in a negative way where it's like a fighting thing. It could just be us revolting against the system itself and pulling all of our dollars out of that system. We're very creative people. We could get back to bartering, we could get back to sewing and get back to doing the things that we need to do. And, get the supplies you need. You're going to have to get supplies, but minimize the money that you're spending in these areas and in these other places so we can build that up. So it's going to take for us to all collectively get to that turning point of, yeah, we tired of this. This is enough. And I think, some things have transpired over the past couple of weeks with that case, and we're doing a boycott. And I put a Black-owned beauty salon up on my page, and the post is damn near going viral because people are tired and they're thanking me for putting that up. They're looking for these places. So if you got a beauty store, if you got a nail store, whatever store you have a clothing store, a shoe store, listen, start, marketing yourself. Start getting yourself out there. Talk to the people in the community. Don't have this idea of rugged individualism. You can't do it by yourself. You need a community. So that's the only way we're going to be able to really uprise, I think, out of that kind of, the atmosphere that we're in. We got to get out of that consumer classism. No more consumers. We got to be creators and builders. We built the country, so we know we can do it. We built the country brick by brick, So we got to get back to that. Get back to that golden age of invention, where we invented over 50% of the inventions worldwide, you know? So we got to get back to that, but it's going to take a real spirit to get into all of us for it to happen. And I do think that we're on the precipice of that because all the changes going on, astrologically and all that kind of stuff, it's priming us. It's basically giving us the atmosphere that we need to take hold of this. So we have to seize the opportunity.
Yeah, that's true. And also, it doesn't have to be a big grand gesture. Some people think that, oh, I need $1,000, I need $2,000 to have money or to buy this or getting started with that. We talk about this all the time. Start where you are. I talked about this in the previous episode. We talked about Bitcoin. I think I was like, well, $1 a day, right? If you ever to buy $1 Bitcoin, if you only have $10, buy $10 worth of Bitcoin, right? So there are small ways that we can start building wealth today, but it has to be on a consistent basis, right? You can't just buy $10 worth of Bitcoin today and then 3 years later you think about it and buy it. It doesn't work like that. It has to be a consistent drip of, you accumulating that particular asset over time and just letting it grow so you can auto set your account to be withdrawn, right, on dollar cost average, maybe every week, every month, whatever that number is, maybe $10 a week, maybe $20 a month, whatever that looks like for you. But just get started today and you'll see a difference in your bank account truly, or in your wealth, right? Because it won't be in your bank. Never put your money in the bank, right? Savings accounts don't return anything. And that's what we've been sold to too. My grandmother she took out a life insurance a policy on my sister and I when we were born. And I was looking at the policy and how much she spent. And I went and talked to the insurance guy. She'd been paying on this policy 40 years. I said, well, how much is the policy, worth? Oh, it's only worth 3,500. I'm like, wait a minute, she's been paying on this for 40 years. How you would, but this doesn't add up, right? And why is she still paying on it? Right. So I'm just saying the system has done us wrong. Had my grandmother been buying stocks instead of paying into that life insurance policy that had the dead end, but we weren't taught that. Right. My grandmother was a good steward of her money. She invested, she bought insurance, she did, not invest, but she bought insurance, she took care of her finances, she paid her bills on time, excellent credit, right? Because people back then, that's what they did. And had she known to go and put money into stocks and start buying shares of Coca-Cola, where would we be as a family today? Right? There's a story about a guy whose father over time just kept slowly buying shares of Coca-Cola. And when he died, his father had, I think, 8 million shares of Coca-Cola when he died. And he was able to pass it down to his son. His son continued that tradition of buying nothing but Coca-Cola shares. And so when he got older and he had kids, he was able to transfer, I think it was like 20 million shares between them or something like that. So, and imagine that, because the Coca-Cola stock was worth like $70 now. So you're talking about 20 million shares times $70, right? And he didn't have to work for that money. That's just money he just started buying these shares of stock to build the family wealth. And now the family's wealthy. But it started with the grandfather. So let that start with you today and your family. And like I said, it doesn't have to be, thousands of dollars. You can start with $10, $5. You only got $5, but do it consistently, right? And that's where you will build and you will start to see a difference in your life.
Absolutely. I love that story, Queen. Thank you for sharing that, because that really does show how you can do it in an incremental way. Like you said, it doesn't have to be a grand gesture. It can be something that you do over time, incrementally over time, that can create that grand gesture at one point in the future. And again, they're playing chess, we're playing checkers. We have to play the long-term game. You got to think long-term and not just think, oh, what can I get for me? No, think what can you get for your great, great, great grandchildren? Like, this is the long-term that I'm saying, because that's how they thought. That's how we got to where we are right now in this country, because back then, those 500 years ago, they planned for all this. They knew that this would be this way now. They also knew that they would have to do a lot of the stuff they're doing now to amp up their game, because they know this was the time we we're going to be starting to wake up. A lot of us are going to start to realize this. So they're up in their game now. They're up in the ante. So we got to up our ante, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, and physically.
Right.
Yes, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention that, aside from being an educator, numerologist, podcaster, I'm also the business manager for a financial education business. So if you're looking for somewhere to start, you're looking for some guidance, you can reach out to me. I'm the business manager for DJ the Money Coach. And we take our clients through what we call crawl, walk, run. So we don't immediately throw you into investments. We build your foundation first. So we start with your budget. We start with your emergency fund. We start with going through your policies, because it's about, yes. We also teach you to generate additional streams of income, but we also teach you how to do more with what you have by cutting the fat. And cutting the fat doesn't mean downgrading your lifestyle. It just means looking at your reoccurring expenses and taking a look at what you're overpaying for. So for example, if I take myself, for example, I started out as a client before I joined on the business side. So I discovered that I was overpaying for my car insurance, my life insurance. So they looked at all those policies and said, yeah, you're paying too much for this. Get into another policy. They also showed me how to pay down the debt. Like debt was one thing we didn't mention in this conversation. Debt is another form of slavery. Chattel slavery is
a lot of debt.
but debt is another form of slavery when it comes to the lifestyle over the legacy. In order to keep up that image of the lifestyle, we often go into a lot of debt, which we talked about in the previous episode. So I'm not gonna say we didn't talk about it at all. We just didn't talk about it that much in this episode, but in the previous episode, we talked about how crippling credit card debt is. But showing me how to pay down debt quicker. And then once you get the foundation down, and once you get an evaluation on what type of investor you are, then we look at different options of investing for you, because it's important to diversify and have your hands in multiple types of investments, and also to create business too, because in this matrix that we're living in this dominant society that we're maneuvering in and operating in, this nation favors business owners more so than it does employees. So we also teach you how to create business and how to legally, leverage the business and the tax laws so you can maximize what you're bringing in and grow what you're bringing in. Now, one of our biggest projects, a cooperative economic project that we've been working on for the past few years, is our real estate development in Zanzibar. So we have it's probably more, but I'll say it's between about 50 to 60 investors, all look like us, that's invested in building a luxury resort in Zanzibar. And you might be saying, well, that's in Africa. What about right here in America? That's just the main project we have going on, but we also have residential as well as I'm losing the other word.
Commercial.
Commercial. Thank you. Yeah, residential as well as commercial projects going on. We're invested in barbershops. I know, and we also have I know we have a complicated relationship with alcohol. Alcohol has been poisonous to us, but we also raise money and have ownership in a Black-owned organic tequila company as well. So I'm just putting that out there. If people are looking for somewhere to start, they're looking for some coaching, someone to hold your hand and walk you through the process of building your financial literacy and building your wealth, you can reach out to me, or you can visit djthemoneycoach.com.
All right. Thank you. So we're going to wrap this episode up. Let's talk about the solutions from this episode. So I know we mentioned it many times. Invest in your own communities, right? Black-owned businesses, if you can. We're trying to strengthen within our community and keep Black dollars within Black hands. So if we can do that on any level, if you find a Black-owned business, definitely support it wherever you can. Now, another thing is with the community, we definitely want to build our own wealth, just like what Brother Nick was saying about, going to the money coach, or maybe just like I said, if you don't want to go that route, you want to start personally, start looking into some things you can buy as far as some stocks. AI stocks are hot. Think about legacy and not lifestyle, right? Sometimes you got to get rid of some things that are extra in life, right? Those subscriptions, right? That bag of weed you was going to buy, right? Or that bottle of alcohol, right? You might need to cut back on your vices in order to invest. And guess what? You'll be healthier in the end. We mentioned that before on another episode. Look into creating a trust, right? And some type of succession plan, because nothing is worse than when you build wealth and then you don't have the type of plan in place after you pass away and your family doesn't benefit from everything that you built, right? Or it goes to taxes or things of that nature. So you definitely want to avoid that, in life and in death. So definitely structure your wealth in a way that it can get passed down to your descendants and all your heirs. Now, again, I want to pass the mic back to my co-host. If you guys have any parting words that you would like to say before I wrap up the episode, you feel free to speak now. Otherwise, I'll just go ahead and end.
I don't really have much else to add. I think we hit a lot of great points. I think we had a lot of great solutions. Nick himself is a solution. You, Portia, you are a solution. So I'm going to add you two to the solutions tonight. Nick with his wealth building knowledge and working with DJ the Money Coach and their investments. Portia, I'm going to say you're a solution.
Upgrade your mind set with crypto book, where you can go to Amazon right now and get it. Also, my crypto course is on learndigitalwealth.com. Right? I don't promote myself enough. I don't know why I don't be thinking about it, but yes. If you guys want to get started there.
That's right. And we have to start thinking of ourselves that way. So actually what I'm going to do right now, let me take that down, because I want to say all of us, all three of us on this panel right now are all some solution-based people that you can come to, change your trajectory of everything that we spoke about tonight. Nick in the DJ to Money Coach with the wealth building techniques and investing techniques. Portia, you with your crypto investments and blockchain knowledge and real estate. Also, you're doing real estate. And then me for marketing and information sharing. If you have a business or you have an idea or you have something that you're trying to get off the ground, reach out to me. I will bring you on and we'll do an interview and we'll spread it, spread the knowledge, spread the wealth. We're in an age of information exchange coming up. So we need to really, take advantage of the energy that's there for us to do that. With Pluto being in Aquarius, with Uranus being in Gemini, we have to take advantage of this. Okay. So we got to start supporting each other. And I'm here to help support people do that. And you guys are there to support them with the assets to actually build their wealth, so along with our solutions, I think that's a solution too. So that's all I'm going to say. I want to say peace and love out there to the Dreams, Dollars, and Destiny family. We really do love you guys, and we want you guys to make sure that we're doing the best job we can for you. So if there's anything that we haven't talked about, send us a topic. You can send it to either myself, Nick, or Portia, or you can send it to our Gmail at dreamsdollarsanddestiny@gmail.com. So you can do it that. Yeah, put it in the comments. You can put it in the comments below, topics you want to hear, or DM one of us. But we prefer you put it in a comment because it raises the algorithm. And peace, love, and that's it. Build that wealth. Play checkers, not chess.
Chess, not checkers. Got you.
Yes. Thank you. Play chess. Build that wealth. Play chess, not checkers. There you go.
Yes. Beautiful.
We're already playing checkers.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Beautifully said. And then just to add on to what Portia said, with the solutions, I know it's tempting, right? You get that raise, you get that extra money, you get that tax return. I know it's so tempting to increase or upgrade your living and your spending. Of course, that's not to say don't treat yourself. Of course, you should treat yourself and celebrate your victories, but don't fall into the trap of avoid falling into the trap of increasing your spending when your income increases, because then you'll be in the same place that you were before you got the raise. You'll just look fancier while you're in the same place. And I also say, turn off the TV, turn off social media, because it's leading you in the wrong path, and it's not a representation of where you should go, and it's not a representation of reality. And then last thing is, I'm not here to tell people who to love, and I really don't care who people love. That's my philosophy when it comes to interracial marriage or sexuality, LGBT, and all of that. As long as you're consenting adults, I don't care. I'm not gonna run down on you in the street like, what you doing with that white woman, brother? Yeah, I'm not gonna
like that Instagram guy.
Yeah,
in the summer.
I'm not gonna do all of that, but I will say that I do encourage you, for the sake of avoiding the whitewashing of our wealth, to love your own. There's a lot of great brothers and sisters out there. Don't buy into the hype of the division, because we're constantly being divided on this media. So don't buy into that. The Queen gave you the statistics, So I encourage you to love each other, to further keep the wealth within our community. But I'm Nick Westbrooks of Supreme Numerics. Meaning of Supreme Numerics is the practical study and application of numerology to help you activate your personal power and abundance. It's been a great episode 10, and I look forward to seeing y'all on the next one. Peace.
Yeah. It's funny that Nick brought that up, because I remember thinking, I grew up in Louisiana, so we have all types of skin color when it comes to Black people. And I always thought, like, why would anybody need to marry a white person when there's so many of us? Like, we're like the rainbow when it comes to shades, right? You got the lightest of the light, almost
Yes.
looking white, and then you got the black juju that if you know, whatever shade you want, we got it for you as far as the race of people. So that's why I was like, there's no need really to go outside because we got everything you need right here. So welcome and thank you again, you guys, for tuning in to this episode. We really do appreciate you. And look, tune back in next Monday for another great episode. You know, peace, proper education, always correct errors. And we always, you know, as always, we love to provide solutions. But again, if you have any topics, like Queen said, drop them in the comments below. We love to hear from you. And thank you again for tuning in. Peace.